History remembers the facts, but what about the phantoms that refuse to be forgotten? Welcome back to The Common Historian, where history meets the supernatural. I'm Jeremy, and each week we explore the haunting intersections between our past and the paranormal. Tonight, we're doing something special. I'm talking about the Adirondacks region and the North Country of New York, where I live, where the mountains hold secrets. The military bases still echo with footsteps from wars long past, from documented murder victims who refuse to leave to paranormal investigations at historical forts. Every story you'll hear tonight is backed by eyewitness accounts, historical records, or professional investigations. So grab your favorite beverage, dim the lights, and prepare to journey into the haunted heart of the North Country, where history refuses to stay buried. Let's start at the southern edge of the Adirondacks, where two historic forts stand as monuments to America's military past and as home to the restless dead. Fort Ticonderoga changed hands between the French, British, and Americans multiple times. The Battle of Carillon in 1758 alone saw 4,000 casualties in a single day. Smallpox epidemics ravaged the garrison. Men were executed. Hand-to-hand combat left the ground soaked in blood. With that kind of trauma, it's no wonder the dead can all leave. The spirit of Nancy Coates, mistress of General Mad Anthony Wayne, is believed to haunt the fort after drowning herself in Lake Champlain, when Wayne supposedly left her for another woman. Her spirit has been seen on the pathways, waiting at the gate, and her sobs have been heard around the fort. Several sightings of soldiers have been reported in the upper windows of the barracks. Sarah Pell of the family that began restoring the fort in the early 20th century has been seen looking over the king's garden for a window from a window above the pavilion. Red glowing orbs have been reported flowing throughout several different rooms around the fort. Here's where it gets even more credible. In March 2010, the TAPS team from Sci-Fi's Ghost Hunters investigated Fort Ticonderoga. The investigation wrapped up with each team member having personal experiences, some overlapping, with recorded evidence of voices, doors creaking, and unexplained thumping. Jason Hawes told the fort curator, "I firmly believe there's paranormal activity at Fort Ticonderoga. The fort has reported voices from apparitions speaking in French and English, lights flashing, drums and bagpipes playing, and even sounds of horses." Now, just down the road in Lake George sits Fort William Henry. This one is even official, more official designation. Fort William Henry in Lake George is the only Adirondack location included on the Haunted History Trail of New York State. Once the setting for countless battles and diseases that swept through primitive living conditions, the fort has seen its fair share of death and destruction. Even Sci-Fi's Ghost Hunters have taken a tour of the grounds to investigate the spectral occurrences. Author Linda Lee Macon called Fort William Henry the most haunted site in all of the Adirondacks. Spirits nicknamed by fort interpreter Justin Cross Profox Connor include the limper, whose footsteps resound on the barracks' upper decks, the beckoner, a disembodied arm that manifests in the mist, the strider, a pair of legs shrouded in morning mist, and the Slammer, an entity that slams doors in people's faces despite strong safety laws. Both forts aren't just allegedly haunted, they've been investigated by professionals who found evidence. Fort William Henry offers candlelight guided ghost tours every evening in summer and fall. If you're going to start your ghost hunting in the Adirondacks, start at these two forts. They're open to the public, they offer tours, and the evidence is documented. The next story is one of the most compelling mysteries in Adirondack history. It's not folklore, it's documented fact with a tragic, mysterious ending. Mabel Smith Douglas was one of the most successful women of her time. She created and served as the first dean of the New Jersey College for Women at Rutgers, which was later renamed Douglas College in her honor. But her personal life was marked by tragedy. Her husband died in 1917, and her son committed suicide 6 years later. This series of misfortunes led to a nervous breakdown, and she spent about a year at a mental health facility. On September 21st, 1933, at her family's camp Onondaga on Lake Placid, Mabel told her daughter she was going to collect leaves for decoration, then launched the family boat into the water. She paddled for 2 miles towards Pulpit Rock, one of the deepest points of the lake, and wasn't seen again for 30 years. Here's where the story gets truly bizarre. On September 15th, 1963, almost exactly 30 years later, scuba diver Richard Niffenberger and Jimmy Rogers were exploring Lake Placid near Pulpit Rock, approximately 100 feet below the surface. They saw what they thought was a mannequin. Upon closer inspection, they realized it was a preserved corpse of a woman. A 50-pound anchor was tied to the corpse's neck with a short rope. As they tried to bring the body to the surface, the woman's facial features disintegrated, and her arms and head fell off. By the time it reached the funeral home, all that was left resembled little more than a sculptor's rough clay form of an unfinished human statue. Since Douglas's disappearance was the only unsolved one in Lake Placid, investigators were able to determine the recovered corpse was hers. The official ruling was accidental drowning, but many have drawn the conclusion of, especially given the anchor tied to her neck, the idea of heading back to New Jersey and figuring out how to dive back into the real world was just too much for her. Yet the coroner declared the official cause of death be accidental drowning. Many people have reported seeing a ghostly figure of a woman near Pulpit Rock. These sightings by campers and boaters have kept the legend of the Lady in the Lake alive to this day. Lake Placid boat tours guides tell the story as they pass Pulpit Rock, where the ghost of Mabel Smith Douglas is said to be seen. This isn't campfire folklore. This is documented history with a woman's preserved body as proof, and people still see her. If Mabel Douglas's story is a mystery, Grace Brown's story is a documented murder that shocked the nation, and her ghost refuses to leave the scene of the crime. Grace grew up on a dairy farm in South Ocelic, Chenango County. In 1905, she came to Cortland to work at the Gillette skirt factory, where she met Chester Gillette, the nephew of the owner. They began dating in secret. She was a farm girl and a factory worker, not up to the family standards. In May 1906, Grace revealed to Gillette she was pregnant. She was 20 and he was 23. At the time, unwed mothers were outcast from society. Grace returned to her family farm, and she and Gillette corresponded by letters in which she begged him to marry her. Gillette wrote to her that he would be taking her away on a romantic outing to the Adirondacks in July. Grace either assumed he was going to propose or thought they would get married while they were away. The young couple spent the first night of their trip in Utica, then took the train to Upper Lake. On July 11th, 1906, they took a train to Big Moose Lake. Gillette and Brown rented a canoe together and spent the afternoon on the lake. Gillette is believed to have struck Brown over the head with a tennis racket or possibly an oar, after which Brown is believed to have fallen out of the boat and drowned. Gillette returned alone and gave varying explanations of what had occurred. After Brown's body was found the next day, Gillette was arrested in the nearby town of Inlet. An autopsy revealed she had suffered major head trauma. From Gillette's rented room, authorities confiscated Brown's love letters to Gillette as evidence. District Attorney George Ward read the letters aloud to the court during the trial in fall of 1906, and Brown's letters gained the trial national attention. On December 5th, 1906, after nearly 5 hours of deliberation, the jury found Gillette guilty of murder in the first degree, and he was sentenced to death by electric chair. Gillette was executed on March 30th, 1908. The murder inspired Theodore Dreiser's 1925 novel, An American Tragedy, the 1951 George Stevens film, A Place in the Sun, starring Elizabeth Taylor, and Jennifer Donnelly's 2003 novel, A Northern Light. The case was featured on Unsolved Mysteries in 1996. Sightings of the ghost of Grace Brown have been continually reported over the years around Big Moose Lake. This figure is often witnessed drowning, but some have also reported seeing her wandering around the lake shore. Think about that. Grace Brown was 20 years old, pregnant, murdered by the man she loved, and her ghost has been seen for over a century, wandering the shores where she died. That's not folklore. That's documented, repeated testimony spanning generations. Let's shift from tragedy to something a bit different. Luxury with a haunted twist. The Sagamore Resort in Bolton Landing, built in the 1880s, is listed as one of the top 10 most haunted hotels in the United States by U.S. News and USA Today. The hotel was burned down by fires in 1893 and 1914. The third iteration was built in the early 1920s and fully reconstructed in 1930 during the Great Depression. Multiple witnesses, staff, and guests reported consistent hauntings. The spirit of a little boy from the early 1950s is seen on the golf course or near the club grill. The boy was known to chase errant golf balls to sell them back to the pro shop, but was hit by a car while chasing balls and died. A ghostly couple from the 1880s descends on the second floor in the Trillium restaurant and takes a seat in the reception room before disappearing. A tall woman with flowing sandy blonde hair, wearing an all-white dress, has been seen in Mrs. Brown's restaurant. In one documented incident, she spoke to a prep cook, walked through him, and disappeared. The cook quit and never came back. One evening, employee Patricia Allen Roberts used the elevator outside the Trillium restaurant. Upon entering, she bumped into someone who was not visible. A portly man then suddenly materialized. The employees have named him Walter. The Sagamore isn't some abandoned building with questionable stories. It's an active luxury resort where paying guests and employees have consistent, documented experiences. One guest posted in 2017, I opened my eyes to a young woman with dark hair up in a low bun, wearing an older fashioned maid uniform, watching me. She disappeared once I made eye contact with her. These aren't century old legends. These are modern first-hand accounts. This next location might surprise you. It's a chocolate factory in North Creek, and it's part of the official haunted history trail of New York State. Barkeater's chocolate is housed in a building dating back to 1884. From 1947 to 2013, the building was home to one family for several generations. The building's history includes tourists that passed through during the night, occupants that passed away at all hours of the day, at least one under mysterious circumstances. Since 2013, Bark Eater Chocolates purchased the property. Nearly every employee has experienced unexplained sounds and movements, hear footsteps and banging sounds. On one occasion, an employee came in to find various objects in the middle of the floor. In 2015, a construction crew working on the building claimed to hear footsteps and voices coming from upstairs, only to realize nobody was in the building. Two paranormal investigations have been conducted at the site, yielding interesting information. The haunted tour are led by Dennis Webster, author of Haunted Adirondacks, and a paranormal investigator. You can actually visit Bark Eater's Chocolate, take a haunted tour, hear firsthand accounts, and make chocolate ghosts. It's one of the few places where you can actively investigate while eating chocolate. Just outside the Adirondacks in Plattsburgh, there's another location with extensive documented history. Opened in 1955, Plattsburgh Air Force Base was an active military base for 40 years before being decommissioned in the mid 90s. Though the base was not established until World War II, the area was also site to major American victories in the War of 1812. Witnesses described cold spots, unexplained flashing lights, ghost children, and loud sounds of soldiers on horseback marching. At the entrance between two pillars, a Revolutionary War soldier's ghost has been seen marching back and forth and standing guard. At the old gym, once used as a wartime morgue, screams and pounding have been heard. At the cemetery, ghostly soldiers are said to march. The old stone barracks is where numerous soldiers have committed suicide, their ghosts allegedly lingering in the area. Other strange occurrences include figures disappearing in front of visitors' eyes and lights flashing with no source. Matthew Borey of the Greater Adirondack Ghost and Tour Company, who leads tours there, said an eternally grieving mother is said to search for the grave of her lost child in the military cemetery that dates to upstate New York's frontier days. Multiple residents who lived near the old base have posted accounts, including one who said, I witnessed soldiers marching and apparitions in the little cemetery, men talking and walking on the platform at the long gray old barrack buildings. Sounds of horses trotting at the old base entrance and cold temperatures in the gym. The base is listed among the 10 allegedly haunted military bases in the United States. Let me end with two locations that are uniquely North Country. Spanky's Rest Diner in Massena has a reputation as one of the most haunted places in the Adirondacks. The current owners report that she felt a presence pass by her when she's been alone in the basement and seen the radio lights and knobs on the stoves turn on and off on their own. Guests have reported feeling uneasy at times and have seen orbs with faces on them. One customer even had her shoelaces tied together while she was eating. Local ghost hunters have reported seeing a girl who drowned in the grassy river walking around the diner, as well as a man with an injured hip. Where do all these hauntings come from? Some point to the fact that Spanky's Diner is located near Pine Grove Cemetery. Speaking of Pine Grove Cemetery, the final resting place is actually the second location for Pine Grove Cemetery. In the mid 1950s, graves from 19 cemeteries on Barnhart Island were moved to accommodate the St. Lawrence Power Project and the Seaway. It is thought that many of the old caskets and remains were not handled with the greatest of care, and that they were buried in a heap in a mass grave in the new cemetery. Stories about the hauntings and strange happenings surrounding the cemetery. Snowmobilers have shared accounts of seeing children running and playing in the graveyard in the winter. When you disturb the dead, sometimes the dead don't stay quiet. Tonight, we've heard about documented locations right here in my backyard. Fort Ticonderoga and Fort William Henry, investigated by ghost hunters, with Fort William Henry on the official haunted history trail for New York State. Mabel Smith Douglas, the lady in the lake, whose body was found 30 years later. Grace Brown, murdered at 20, still wandering Big Moose Lake. The Sagamore Resort, one of America's top 10 haunted hotels. Barkeater's Chocolate, with professional investigations and haunted tours. Plattsburgh Air Force Base, where Revolutionary soldiers still stand guard. Spanky's Diner and Pine Grove Cemetery, where disturbed graves mean restless spirits. Every single one of these stories is backed by historical records, eyewitness testimony, professional investigations, or all three. Living in the North Country means living with history, sometimes living with those who refuse to leave it. These aren't Hollywood stories. These are neighbors' experiences, our local legends, our documented hauntings. If you've had an experience at any of these locations or anywhere else in the North Country, I want to hear from you. You can reach out through my calendar link that will be in the description below. Many of these locations offer tours and are open to the public. And I will have those links in the description below as well. Fort Ticonderoga and Fort William Henry both have ghost tours. Barkeater's Chocolate has haunted chocolate making sessions. The Sagamore is a luxury hotel where you can actually book a room and stay. Lake Placid boat tours will take you past Pulpit Rock, where the Lady in the Lake is seen. These aren't just stories, they're experiences waiting for you. Remember, history never truly dies, it just finds new ways to haunt us. Until next time, keep digging into the darkness.